Hey everyone, it's Colin. How's it going? While many are familiar with Sony's VAIO computers, the company also made one computer-like product line you've probably never heard of. This is a Sony PDF W77. As its name suggests, it's an e-reader for documents, and it was released in September of 1999, though it was sold only in Japan. While it has about the same footprint as a large, modern tablet, it's different in a few ways. It's significantly thicker and heavier, weighing in at around 6 pounds or 2.7 kilograms. It also included a stylus, which is the only way to interact with it. Its touchscreen won't recognize finger presses, as I learned the hard way. The unit I bought was missing its stylus. I tried a few basic plastic ones from a PDA along with a rubber-tipped one meant for modern smartphones and tablets, but none of those worked. Some research suggested that the unit used similar technology to a Wacom graphics tablet, but the stylus that came with one I had wasn't recognized either. Instead of endlessly buying random styli in an attempt to find one that was compatible, I just bought another W77 instead. This one has obviously seen some serious discoloration from UV exposure, the same kind of yellowing that afflicts other retro computers and game consoles. And while this unit was said to work, the most important part to me is that it included its original stylus. It's a bit yellowed itself, but thankfully the stylus did indeed work on the first W77 I bought. The touchscreen features a resolution of 640 by 480, and while it's nowhere near the quality of a modern IPS display, it's still reasonably sharp and easy to read. The unit features a kickstand on the back to prop it up in portrait orientation, and a parallel port hides underneath. Sadly, it uses a non-standard interface, and the connection kit was optional. It would let you hook the unit up to a PC for transferring files, or directly to a printer. That cable is somewhat hard to find because most people who bought a W77 would get documents into it a different way. On the left side is a sheet-fed black and white scanner. For one-off scans, it could be used as is, but if you had a number of pages to go through, the scanner could be detached and set elsewhere, while the main unit was propped up. The kickstand even has a neat rewind mechanism to keep the scanner's cable tidy. The W77 has a fairly intuitive interface for setting up scans. Pictures help you figure out how to orient pages correctly, and you can append multiple pages into a single file, even later on. If you needed to capture something like a book, the W77 had another trick up its sleeve. The scanner can open up and roll across printed material. L and R buttons control the direction it goes depending on which side of the book you're scanning. The resulting images certainly aren't photo quality. The device is limited to 200 dpi and generally was intended for text documents. But it does work well, and you can annotate files using the stylus, like writing notes or erasing. There was also basic tagging capabilities, so you could search for a file, though the platform wasn't sophisticated enough to offer OCR. And interestingly, despite its model number, it doesn't seem to use Adobe's PDF technology. But maybe the most curious thing about the PDF W77 is its choice of storage medium. At the time of this unit's launch in 1999, Sony's memory stick format had been around for a year. While we'd consider flash media like this to be an obvious choice now, the company went a different direction. It chose to use MiniDisc instead, specifically MD data, which had a capacity of 140 megabytes. And even though the discs weren't cheap, about $30 US each, they were actually a much more economical option than memory stick. At the time, the largest one of those available was 32 megabytes and cost $100. Each disc was said to hold up to about 1,000 pages of scanned files, and you could organize content into folders and what Sony called drawers. To make file organization even more flexible, Sony included not just one MiniDisc drive, but two. Individual files could be copied from one to the other, or entire discs could be duplicated. Discs could also be protected with a passcode in case they contained sensitive information. I was curious as to the hardware inside this unit. Was it just a laptop in a tablet form factor? As it turns out, no, it's completely unique. The main processor is from Hitachi. It's based on the SH RISC architecture and runs at 66 MHz. It has built-in DSP features designed specifically for image processing, making it a good fit for this kind of device. Nearby are a pair of 2 MB flash chips likely to store the real-time OS, along with a couple of custom Sony chips to drive things like the scanner and MiniDisc drives. And in case you're wondering, yes, the serial numbers on those MiniDisc drives are sequential. Perhaps unsurprisingly, the touchscreen isn't just like a Wacom tablet, it actually is one. Sony licensed the technology with a pair of Wacom-branded chips to match. So why didn't the stylus from my graphics tablet work? Both are inductively powered by the touch surface and emit radio waves that are used to track their position, but it's likely that they operate on different frequencies. If I had access to a Wacom tablet from the same time period, it's possible its stylus would have worked. The unit has a built-in battery, but runtime isn't very good. Sony said you could expect about 90 minutes of viewing files, or a paltry 40 when scanning them. But I don't think this device was exactly meant for all-day use. Rather, I suspect it was meant for business people to take with them. For example, a sales rep could visit a client, approve a contract, and then scan it on the spot. It was also likely targeted towards less tech-savvy users, with straightforward controls and a workflow meant to mimic handling paper files. For example, the delete button has an icon of a sheet of paper going through a shredder. This convenience, of course, came at a cost. The PDF W77 sold for the equivalent of $1,800 US when it was new. And it wasn't even the first of its kind. Sony's initial model was the PDF-5 from August of 1996, followed up by the PDF HD7 a few months later. That one included not just the MiniDisc drive, but also a 540 megabyte hard disk and emphasized PC connectivity. Note the generic PC in this publicity photo. Sony hadn't yet launched its Vio line when it was taken. The W77's immediate predecessor was the PDF V55. It features the same portrait orientation, but was a much more basic device. In fact, the W77 was the most advanced of them all, being the only one with dual MiniDisc drives and a detachable scanner. But it was also Sony's last. Laptops were getting significantly more portable, as were scanners that connected to them. With a workforce becoming increasingly computer-savvy and paper-based business processes ever so slowly turning digital, there wasn't much of a need for a device like this anymore. No doubt these were sold in small quantities, likely just a few thousand units. Of course, that makes them fairly uncommon now, but not necessarily expensive. The first W77 I bought off of Yahoo Auctions Japan cost me the equivalent of $42 after fees, and the second one with the stylus was $51. The most expensive one I've ever run across was $230, but it was new in box. Still, this is an interesting piece of retro tech in a few ways. It's a purpose-built computer-like device, but it isn't a full-fledged PC. It's one of just a few gadgets that uses the MD data format for non-audio purposes. And it's an example of a Sony product targeting a market and purpose that people typically wouldn't associate with the company. It's an odd device using odd technology, and the fact it works so well makes it oddly compelling. If you liked the video, I'd appreciate a thumbs up and be sure to subscribe. You can follow me on social media at thisdoesnotcomp, and as always, thanks for watching.